Radio TV Phono Nut here, and we have a couple of failed LED light bulbs. These are the type that were designed to take the place of the old incandescent bulbs. These are Great Value brand, which is China Mart's house brand, although the name should be changed to Ungreat Value. I believe it claims on the box that these will last 18 years with an average of 3 hours a day usage. Well, I can promise you that these bulbs have rarely seen 3 hours a day use, and they didn't last near about 18 years. If you get 6 months to a year out of one, you're doing good. Now, one of them recently started acting up. It was intermittently flickering, and the other one has been here a while for me to do a post-mortem on it, but I believe it was totally dead. So we're going to fire them up and see what happens. Okay, this one looks to be totally dead. No dim glow, no flickering or anything. Now let's see what this one does, and I'm going to move the camera away because if this thing starts flickering brightly, I don't want that to cause any ill effects. So well, that one's not doing anything either. Let's make sure my connection is good. This is my dim bulb tester, and I had a shorting plug plugged into the outlet on it, so let's see if it's making good connection. Alright, my short had come loose, so now it's on. It flickered a couple of times when I plugged it in, but now it seems to be behaving normally. Let's unplug it and try again. Like I said, I'm not going to point this camera directly at it because I don't want it to cause any ill effects, especially if it starts blinking. Yeah, now it's blinking. Okay, so now you know that bulb indeed has a problem. Now let's try the other. Alright, here we go. Okay, this bulb is stone cold dead. No dim glow, no blinking, no nothing. So I think that's the one we're going to tear into first. Now, I had one the other day that I did a post-mortem on that was it was in a ceiling fan fixture, and whenever I turned it on, it came on normally for about 2 seconds and went out. And then whenever I turned it on later in a totally darkened room, it glowed very, very dimly. So I took it, I busted it apart, and the filter capacitor in it was a 15 microfarad 200 volt. It checked 13 microfarad with an ESR of about 6.5 ohms. Now, in something like an old vacuum tube based circuit, that might not be a problem, but apparently it was a problem in that bulb because I tacked in a 22 microfarad capacitor because that's the closest thing I had on hand, and it came right back to life. And yet people jump all over me about having a 1960s era Sprague capacitor and pieces of equipment that I have. Now, that Sprague atom capacitor from 1960 whatever tested fine for ESR, leakage, and capacitance value. But yet we have a capacitor in a modern day bulb. I think the date code on it was 2022, and of course it was some off-brand. And we have such a capacitor that's already failed. So in some cases, the older parts are actually better. This one here that's totally dead, I figure it probably has an LED that's open in the series string and killing the whole thing. Just heard some noisy car drive by here, probably a Dodge Challenger or a Dodge Charger. That seems to be the official ghetto car in today's world, backfiring like crazy. Now the other morning I heard something that sounded like a car driving around firing a gun, and this went on off and on for about 45 minutes. And I actually thought it was gunfire at first, but then I figured out, no, that's got to be that car backfiring. And then later that day, I saw on one of the Facebook news outlets where the cops pulled over, I think it was 2 or 3 Chargers and Challengers, some of both, because they had gotten numerous calls throughout the city. And as it turns out, they're actually modifying these cars to backfire and make it sound like gunfire. Now, I can remember growing up that if you was in a car that was backfiring, then that was an embarrassment, because that made it look like you were riding around in a piece of junk. And now we got people modifying their vehicles to backfire because they think it's cute and they want to scare people. Alright, now as far as getting in this bulb, sometimes you can just twist on the diffuser really hard and get it to break loose, but I know the other bulb that I did the post-mortem on, I had to actually bust it off, so we'll see. I'll try to be as non-invasive as possible, but I don't know. Well, we got it apart, but unfortunately we cracked the diffuser in the process, but that's okay. We'll just, if we get it fixed, we'll glue it back together as best we can. Now here's what we have on the inside. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 LEDs here, most likely all wired in series. And then we have our current regulator IC, a bridge rectifier. We have 3 surface-mounted resistors, and under here there will be about a 30-ohm fusible resistor and the 15 microfarad filter capacitor. We're going to check to see if we have any AC coming in. So I have my meter clipped in place. Let's see what happens. Okay, we have 124 volts coming in, so that tells us that the fusible resistor is okay. Now let's move over to the capacitor and see if we have any DC there. We have 175 volts there, and the bleeder resistor is pulling the charge off of the capacitor, so we know the capacitor is not totally dead. So the problem is either going to be an open LED, or this chip is going to be bad, or one of those little resistors is going to be open. So we'll let that discharge. So using the ohm meter to trace things out, this resistor here is the bleeder resistor across the filter cap, and these 2 resistors here are in parallel, and those are your sense resistors. And in a moment we'll look at a schematic of what this likely is. Here's a circuit diagram that looks to be very similar to what we have. It's based on an SM2082D integrated circuit. So we have they have this marked for 220 volts, but ours in the USA would be 120 volts coming into a bridge rectifier, where it's rectified and filtered by this capacitor here. And then we have the bleeder resistor to discharge the capacitor when the power is disengaged. And then the hot side of our line connects to the anode of LED number 1, and then the cathode of said LED connects to the anode of LED number 2, and then the cathode of that LED connects to the anode of LED number 3, etc., etc. And then that goes out to pin 1, connects to pin 1, which is the output pin of that regulator chip. And then pin 2 goes to ground. And then pin 3 is where our sense resistor connects. In our case, it looks like we have 2 of them in parallel that connect between that pin and ground. Now, some of these bulbs have a 3-pin IC like this one, and then some of them, like the one I have a surface-mounted IC with about 8 pins on it, but they're only using 3 of them. So yeah, not a lot to this. and the most likely cause of my problem is one of these LEDs has opened up, and since they're in a series string, when one opens, then that kills the whole circuit. Well, as it turns out, this first LED bulb is open in the string. I went through and was checking the voltage drop across each bulb, and when I got to that bulb, when I placed my meter across it, the rest of the LED lamps lit dimly, and we had about 70 volts drop across that. So this bulb is the culprit, the first one in the string, and it does not have any kind of discoloration or black spot on it. You can see when I measure across it, they're dimly lit, and I'm getting about 73 volts across it. So what we're going to attempt to do is bust off that defective LED and put a jumper across it, and this lamp should last for a little while, maybe a minute, maybe an hour, maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe a month, who knows. I got the LED removed. It didn't want to come off in one piece. I got the top half of it off easily with a pair of wire cutters. Only way I could get the bottom half off was to scrape it, heat it up really well, put a blob of solder on it, and then I was able to grab it with the wire cutters and pull it off, and then I was able to scrape back the pads on the circuit board here. And this is not easy to solder to because it has an aluminum backing on it that acts as a heat sink, but I got a blob of solder across it, so let's fire it up and see what happens. And there it is. I'm not giving it full line voltage yet, but let's put the diffuser back on and let it go. And there it is with the diffuser on it. I have not glued it back in place yet, but it's working. Now let's move on to the next one, the one that flickers. The number 2 came apart a little less destructive than number 1. I just tried to go around it with a small flat blade screwdriver and tapped on it with a hammer in several spots to break the glue bond, and then I was able to get it to pop loose. And this is the one that was intermittently flickering, and I suspect that's probably a bad capacitor. At the ESR on that capacitor is about 8 ohms, which is a bit high. And it's reading 13.2 microfarads, just like the other one was reading, and the one I didn't do the video on that I basically destroyed. Unfortunately, it does not look like this board is going to come apart without me destroying this thing like I did the earlier one. But then again, these things were never meant to be serviced. Well, I didn't destroy it completely, but in the process, one of the little tabs where the capacitor installed popped off. Now that's not even soldered, they have it crimped in place. Alright, under magnification, this capacitor is an AISHI brand, when only the best will do, rated for 130 degrees Celsius, which I kind of doubt in reality, and date coded the 7th week of 2022. So there you go. 3-year-old capacitor that really hasn't been in use that long. It's already failed, but I've got capacitors, electrolytic capacitors and equipment that's 50, 60 years old or more and still working. Now I scraped back where that connector clip went. Here's a 16 microfarad Sprague Atom from 1962, and it's jumping right around between 15 and 16 microfarads, so right on the money. ESR test is perfect, 0 ohms. Alright, let's test for leakage. 50 volts, not even a flicker. 200 volts, not even a flicker. 300, not even a flicker. And 400, which will be close to its rated voltage. Not even a flicker. Now let's see if the original has any leakage. No, it has no leakage, but the ESR and the capacitance value is a little off. Like I may have already said, that probably wouldn't be an issue if this was in a tube circuit, but something like this, it can be an issue. Well, I finally got this hookup wire to the solder to stick on this pad where our terminal broke off. You can probably guess what I'm going to do with this long length of hookup wire I have on here. And then on the other one where the terminal didn't break off the board, I just soldered that in place. Now I want to try to drill a hole in the lamp housing here. Well, I was going to have this old Sprag Atom cap hanging out the side, but it's still blinking even with that in there. Alright, here's a new 22. Let's see what it does. Blinks like crazy with that one too. And then it finally stays on. So maybe this isn't a capacitor problem. Well, now at 120 volts, it's staying on. Let's go back to the Sprag and see what happens. Alright, here's the old Sprag. Alright, it's staying on now. Alright, now it seems to be behaving. Okay, I've had it off and on and left it on for extended periods of time. It still seems to be behaving. So let's try it one more time. Okay, that's good. So I don't know what the flickering was about with the new capacitors, unless maybe they had to be broken in. You know, with tube equipment that wouldn't be a problem, but a lot of this modern solid state stuff is very, very picky. So we're going to keep alternating this off and on and letting it run, and if it doesn't mess up, we're going to get some epoxy or something and put all this back together. And then of course the next time it fails, I'll just throw it in the garbage and be done with it. And no, I would not recommend doing this at home with a big capacitor hanging out the side with high voltage on the terminals. But for entertainment value in this video, it'll be perfectly fine. And I'll probably just stick it somewhere and just see how long it lasts. But we still made a point anyway. This Sprag capacitor that's 60 plus years old is in better condition than the 2 or 3 year old capacitor that was in this light bulb. I don't remember when I bought that carton of bulbs. I'm pretty sure it was after my mother passed away in February of 23. So they haven't been here any longer than 2 years, and there are no bulbs left in that carton. I've used them all because they didn't last like they were advertised to. And another thing, a lot of these bulbs, including these, are not rated for enclosed fixtures such as a ceiling fan or a vent hood over a range or whatever. And in my opinion, every one of these bulbs ought to be rated for enclosed use, because the majority of these bulbs are going to be used in some type of enclosed fixture. So just make them all rated for enclosed use, and then if you use them in a table lamp or whatever that's not enclosed, then that's just all the better. I mean, I've got sense enough to know when a bulb like this is installed in a ceiling fan fixture with a globe on it, then the heat's just going to build up. I mean, that's just a given. And what kills these capacitors is, number one, they're a cheap capacitor to begin with. Number two, they're sealed up inside of the base of this lamp that gets very hot with no ventilation, and over time the heat just takes its toll. Now with this Sprag capacitor external to the lamp, then it won't be affected by heat so much, and it'll be interesting to know just how long it'll hold up. So at some point I'll get some epoxy or silicone or something, put all this back together the best I can, and just put it into use somewhere and just see how long it holds up. Well, the light's still working, no more flickering. It's come on every time, and it's stayed on for as long as I've left it on, so I guess it's fixed. But anyway, changing the subject a bit, we have a VCR, and in said VCR is a VHS tape. And no, we're not gonna repair the VCR. The VCR works okay. I'm just going to go into a bit of a rant mode. I remember back around 88 or 89, my parents bought a full-size Magnavox VHS camcorder. You know the type, one of the big ones that you sat up on your shoulder. But that was advanced technology in 88 or 89 because it had everything in one unit. I remember the older video cameras that had the tape transport in a separate unit that went over your shoulder, and then the tape transport connected to the camera assembly. But those things were terribly expensive, and my parents just didn't see the need of buying one. But by the late 80s, the prices of camcorders had come down some, so they finally broke down and bought one. And my mother carried that thing with her everywhere she went. Family reunions, church functions, birthday parties, you name it, she took it with her. School functions, all of it. And at the time, whenever I was a kid, I thought Mama was crazy for taking that with her everywhere she went. But now that most everybody in the family is deceased, I'm glad she carried that thing with her everywhere she went, and I wish she'd have carried it with her more, if you know what I mean. So I dug out the box of tapes out of the closet, and there's a big box of them, and I started watching some of them. Yes, I have a few VCRs that still work, but here's the issue. These tapes, for the most part, are at least 30 years old. And we do know that magnetic tape tends to degrade with age and repeated use. We also know that VCRs are no longer being made. I don't think there's been a VCR manufactured in about 10 years. Funai was the last ones to make a VCR, and as crappy as those were, they might as well have not made any. And we know the existing machines that I have are not going to last forever. It just stands to reason. Anything that's electromechanical, they're going to wear out eventually, and I'm not going to be able to get parts for them. So I got to thinking maybe I need to transfer these old family tapes to a more modern digital format. Now, I've got a couple of DVD recorders that I picked up here, there, and yonder. One of them, I think, is a DVD VHS combo that I picked up cheap at the Salvation Army, and the other one is just a standalone DVD recorder. I have no idea if either one of them work. They probably don't. That's probably why it made its way to the Salvation Army. But I'll get around to testing them one day. But DVDs are kind of on their way out, and I don't put a lot of trust in them either, as far as them holding up. So I got on eBay and ordered one of those things. I think it was about $8. It was under $10. One of those interfaces that has the inputs for the composite video and audio, and then it plugs into the USB port on your computer. So I got it in today and was anxious to play with it. I connect the VCR all up, install the software, and whenever I plugged the USB thing into the computer, I kept getting these error messages on the screen. I'd click out of it and it'd pop back up again. I finally kept clicking on it, and it finally went away and didn't come back. And I sat there and played with that thing for the longest time, trying to get it to work. Had no luck, kept getting more and more aggravated, and then I was asking myself, why do you continue to buy this cheap crap off of eBay? You know it's no good. So I just finally got fed up with it and threw the crap in the garbage, and that was that. So unless we can come up with a way that actually works where I can transfer these videotapes to a more modern digital format, then we're just going to have to resign myself to the fact of we'll watch the tapes until something happens to them or until all my machines tear up, and then that'll just be the end of it. You know, I don't really want it to be that way, but it's not worth the aggravation. You ought to be able just to buy something and plug it in and it work. Ran into something similar a while back when my hard drive was getting full with all of the video material and music on it. So I bought a couple of 1 terabyte USB thumb drives, one for the music, one for the YouTube videos, a lot of which was stuff that I either had not published yet or stuff that I never finished completing and was going to get around to it again one day. Well, I made the mistake of transferring everything and then erased the stuff off the computer, and then whenever I went back later and tried to play back some of the stuff I transferred, I found that 3/4 of it seemed like the file had gotten corrupted, or for some reason it wouldn't play it back, and then I just blew a gasket and deleted the whole thing and said the heck with it. So technology is supposed to be great when it works, but I'm getting fed up with this technology that's supposed to help you make things easier, but it don't do nothing but send me into a tailspin because it never works the way it's supposed to. So, and I know I probably need to buy a new computer. I'm running an old Windows 7 computer from whenever Windows 7 first come out, and the hard drive in it was originally, I think, a 1 terabyte, but it died somewhere along the way, and somebody I know who's into computers, just to do me a favor to get it back working, they put a hard drive in it that they had on hand that was a lot smaller than what was in there originally. So, like I said, I know I need to buy a new computer, but I hate buying new computers because it's a royal pain in the butt getting everything set up and getting everything transferred and getting everything working like it's supposed to. So I'll probably just keep using that computer until it dies completely, and then I'll decide what I'm going to do then. But as far as this VHS dilemma, you know, I would like to be able to transfer the stuff to a more modern format and, of course, keep the original material just in case something happens, but I shouldn't have to go through a lot of unnecessary aggravation to do it. I ought to be able just to buy something, plug it in the computer, hook the VCR to it, hit the record button, and it do what it's supposed to do. But anyway, we're down to about 15 seconds. That's about all I've got today. And this is probably the only YouTube video of a modern LED lamp with a 60-year-old Sprag capacitor hanging out the side of it. I was looking back over the video of this light bulb, and I noticed one of them. It looked like I had written a date on it when I installed it. It looked like November the whatever of 22. So maybe I have had these bulbs a little longer than I thought. I believe that was the one that was probably in the hood over the stove. But even still, that bulb is not turned on and left on all the time. It usually is turned on long enough to do what needs to be done, and then it gets turned off. So that bulb was installed right before my mother, not long before my mother went in the hospital for the final time. And I can't remember when it failed, but it might have lasted a year, maybe. It's been laying around here forever, for that I was going to do a video about it. I just never got around to doing it until now. So I guess that's all we've got for this. I hope you got something out of the Chinesey light bulb with a 1960s era Sprague cap hanging out the side of it. And we'll do some more stuff later.